Hey, welcome for the fourth time. Welcome everybody. On behalf of Adult Ed, I'm Scott Hartle. I want to welcome everybody here for this faith conversation. Yeah, okay. So it's great to welcome back Reverend Peggy Krong to WPC. And for anybody who doesn't know, Peggy was our associate pastor from 2000 to 2012. And I can say, Peggy, I personally got to know you very well right here in Hoffman Hall when I was a deacon. And you had so many great devotions and a lot of special time together there. Since Peggy's retirement, she's been working with Carmichael Presbyterian Church in Sacramento to assist with the settlement of Afghan refugees. That's notable. I just want people to be aware of that. That's something she's done in her time, retirement. And she's an associate member of the Iona Ecumenical Christian Community on the island of Iona in Scotland, a place deeply rooted in Celtic Christianity. I want to mention we're going to do Q&A at the end, so if you want to save any questions you have till the end, we'll have some time for Q&A. And so to present Fingerprints of God, welcome Reverend Peggy Krong.
It is, you know, I have been really anxious all week. I've kind of been, for those of you who have reached out so kindly to me and I haven't responded well, I've been kind of in a self-imposed exile. I really needed that sermon today. And I will be, before we leave, I'm going to have to go do a ribbon thing. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Before I start, I want to pass around, I have a bibliography for more reading. It's not comprehensive at all, but it'll give you an idea. I thought it would be better and save more trees if you put your email, if you want it, I'll email it to you rather than making a stack of papers that don't get used. So,
good idea.
Oops.
Smart. All
right. It is such a privilege to be here. I have so much I would like to say, but I haven't got that much time to say it, so I better start. I will give you just a quick rundown on my faith journey, a very quick rundown. I was born into a family of fundamentalists, and when I went to college, well, when I was a senior in high school, I know exactly where I was. I was in a car waiting for a friend, and my mother was in the car, and I had a Jewish friend, and I said, you know, Mom, because my parents were beautiful, lovely people, great parents, but they were biblical literalists. And I said, I know the Bible says if you haven't heard of Jesus and you're okay in the afterlife, you get a free pass. But if you've heard of Jesus and you haven't accepted him, too bad. And I said, Mom, you know, my friend Sally Epstein, you can't live in the United States and not know something about Jesus and Christianity. And the answer I got was, God bless her, I don't know, honey, I just know what the Bible says. So that sent me kind of an agnostic period, and then I went to a Presbyterian-related school I started in for undergrad, and was required, back then, was required to pick a religion course to take, and I think, and I chose Old Testament, got a new fabulous professor, and as I like to say, I found out I could believe in Jesus Christ without having a lobotomy. So that was a big change. During my time, I spent 18 years in Taos, New Mexico, which I really consider my hometown because my parents moved around a lot. I didn't really have a hometown growing up. And I was very active in the church there for those 18 years. I served in the presbytery as a layperson, went to seminary in '92 when I had a rather traumatic event in my life, and open new windows, and that is one thing I found about God's grace. Every single time I get dragged kicking and screaming to something, I am enormously grateful for it later. And but when I really got interested in Celtic spirit, well, really in spirituality, period, because I was, is that like me?
It's the microphone, don't worry about it.
Well, I don't like it. If I stand back further, would that be good? Yeah. Okay, so I was telling you what? Oh, when I went to, I really wasn't, I can't say I was in the head, you know. That's one thing that drew me to the Reformed tradition, was faith-seeking understanding and, you know, not having to lose your intellectual curiosity in order to follow Jesus. But when I really got interested in spirituality was when I was attended at the behest, because of the good graces of Westwood, I was able to attend SFTS and get a diploma in the art of spiritual formation. And so in the course of that 3-year program, I was introduced to a lot of things that I hadn't really, I mean, I knew about, but I hadn't given much thought. So this is one of my favorite, I just love this. How many of you have seen this before? It's an old picture of, I should be able to tell you what, but I don't think so. Some nebula somewhere in God's universe. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about tracing the fingerprints of God in the 21st century. Well, first of all, what is spirituality, much less Celtic spirituality? What is spirituality? Well, there is a famous Benedictine who said, all spiritual writers disagree with one another, and I disagree with all of them. What we think, what we do, and how we do it. Now, this is spirituality is, oh, that doesn't work, that's okay. Knowing God to the full, experiencing God to the full, transformation of existence on the basis of Christian faith and truths, attaining Christian authenticity in life and thought. And now we're done. Because I've accomplished all those things. This was a definition I found. And so I think it would be an okay definition if it said what you aspire to. Yes. Spirituality is aspiring to know God to the full, to experience God to the full, and to engage in the transformation of existence on the basis of Christian faith and truths, and attaining Christian authenticity. So now let's go to the Celts. We have to know a little bit about them before we talk about Celtic spirituality. Do we have any Celtic historians here, experts? Because there's probably people in this room who know more than I do. I'm not claiming to, be an expert, but I'm fascinated with them. A little bit about them. There's evidence that they were in Europe BCE all the way, and I really didn't know this till fairly recently, all the way to Galatia, which is in the center of Turkey. There were Celts all over, the Keltoi. And historians have until recently thought they originated in Gaul and migrated to the British Isles, but new historical evidence claims the reverse. And so I would say regarding that, I don't know. And but they were a rural, tribal, nomadic people. And they were totally, the Celts in Ireland and northern Scotland were completely unaffected by the Romans. The Romans never made it to Ireland. And that made a huge difference in how how they interpreted and accepted Christianity when it did come. And, you know, Romans are, if you want order, you know, you're going to go to the Romans. And Celts, not so much. So the Celtic spiritual tradition is rooted in Ireland, and it is present today in Scotland, Wales, and Northumbria, where the Lindisfarne in Northumbria. Has anyone been there? I haven't been there, but here were some early Christian Celtic notables. One was Pelagius, who was an Irish theologian. He was an advocate of free will, and he denied original sin. And if you've read anything about church history, you know something about the Augustine-Pelagius controversies. Since Augustine, and he really did, original sin was not present in the Christian theology before Augustine. So he introduced it, and it was, of course, embraced widely. And he was proclaimed a heretic and, of course, excommunicated. And he spent, I think, most of the rest of his life in northern Africa, in Carthage. Patrick, of course, we all know about Patrick, appeared in this, And Columba is the person who was responsible for Iona, starting Iona, building that community. He left Ireland on his coracle. You know, coracles, they're little round. It's just astounding to think that they went to the sea, to the open sea. They have them in Iona. You can see them. They're not that big. They're like big enough for one person here to sit on. And they went from Ireland and ended up in Scotland. Of course, he didn't know where he was headed, but when he got there, he decided that was it. And then Aidan, who was an Irish monk who left Ireland, and he established Lindisfarne. Now, what was the difference in Christianity, the way the Romans accepted it and the Celts? Of course, I did not mention, and it's not up there, but we all, of course, know the Celts were preceded by the Druids, and they kept in their Christianity a lot of the Druid views of the universe and especially the earth, especially. The Roman Church was highly institutionalized, and Celts not so much. For the Romans, one person I read said that it was "do as I say," and I'm expected to be obeyed if you're an officer cleric in the church. But for the Celts, it was "do as I do," and I hope you follow me. And then, of course, cathedrals. The Celts did not have large cathedrals. They only had very small, modest, even huts for worship. Unlike their cathedral was creation. And unlike the Romans. And they both were monastic in a way, but the Western Church, as monasteries developed, they were very ordered. Most of them had a rule of order, and do still. And again, Celts weren't into that. And for them, they were monastic, but more inclusive. And when I say monastic, I mean the whole community lived, and women led. And in fact, I didn't put her up there, and I should have St. Brigid, who was really significant in Ireland. And the Roman Catholic Church did not like her at all. She was a problem. I wish I could do like, you know, that when you hear ads, like especially for medicine, and they do all the fast talking so they could legally do it. Tell you what, I wish I could do that, but I couldn't. So I'm not giving this the credit it deserves. They are creation affirming, and I'm probably going to have to look at this a little closer. From the Westminster Dictionary of Christian Spirituality. Christian spirituality is not simply for the interior life or for the inward person, but as much for the body as the soul, and is directed to the implementation of both the commandments of Christ to love to love God and our neighbors. I thought that was such a lovely idea, not so great when you're trying to read it. So at the heart of Celtic Christianity is really simple living, following the way, which in Mark, it comes, the Gospel of Mark is on the way, on the way, on the way. And I just loved that about the Gospel of Mark. So that's how I perceive my life. I'm on the way and traveling the journey in the everyday ordinariness of life. Bonhoeffer once referred to holy worldliness. There's no false divide between the sacred and the secular. An integrated life of body and soul, work and worship, wonder and ordinariness. And the Celtic Christianity is deeply in tune with the earth. Now, I have to, again, a caveat, I have to let you know that I am constantly trying to do this, and I never make it. Like, Chris talked about the stones today. There's a similar thing, and I think we maybe did it in a Westwood retreat once, where you take the things that are, the negatives in your life, you write them down on a piece of paper, and then during a worship service, you bring them forward, and they're burned. Do any of you remember doing that? Yeah. And I told a colleague in San Antonio once, which is where I learned about that, I said, I've burned the same damn thing so many times. And this morning, I'm really trying to be, I'm not a nature person, I'm an indoorsy person, but I'm trying to work on that. But this morning, I was walking my dog, and I was in a hurry, and some irises that were not there yesterday. Beautiful, free. And I just had to zoom right by. I couldn't. So this is what I, in my faith, aspire and rarely achieve. I love this quote from A River Runs Through It. In our family, there was no clear line between religion and fly fishing. We lived at the junction of great trout rivers in western Montana, and our father was a Presbyterian minister and a fly fisherman who tied his own flies and taught others. He told us about Christ's disciples being fishermen, and we were left to assume, as my brother and I did, that all first-class fishermen on the Sea of Galilee were fly fishermen, and that John, the favorite, was a dry fly fisherman. I don't know what that means, but maybe some of you do. So this is really, I just have to, can you hear me?
Yes.
I want to read this to you, and I don't have it, so I have to look, this is, I have a son-in-law who is a real outdoorsy person. And I lived next to him for 12 years. And he could not grasp the fact that I was rarely outside. I had a beautiful home and a beautiful chair and beautiful books. And so I saw this poem by Billy Collins, and I thought I had to send that to Randall. I have never been fishing on the Susquehanna, or any other river for that matter, to be perfectly honest. Not in July or any month have I had the pleasure, if it is a pleasure, of fishing on the Susquehanna. I am more likely to be found in a quiet room like this one. He's in an art museum. A painting of a woman on the wall, a bowl of tangerines on the table, trying to manufacture the sensation of fishing on the Susquehanna. There is little doubt that others have been fishing on the Susquehanna, rowing upstream in a wooden boat, sliding the oars under the water, then raising them to drip in the light. But the nearest I have ever come to fishing on the Susquehanna was one afternoon in a museum in Philadelphia. when I balanced a little egg of time in front of a painting in which that river curled around a bend, under a blue cloud-ruffled sky, dense trees along the banks, and a fellow with a red bandana, sitting in a small, green, flat-bottomed boat, holding the thin whip of a pole. Now, that is something I am unlikely ever to do. I remember saying to myself and the person next to me. Then I blinked and moved on to other American scenes of haystacks, water whitening over rocks, even one of a brown hare who seemed so wired with alertness, I imagined him springing right out of the fray. So this is what I, throughout my life, if you gave me two options, we're going to go to the lake today, we're going to go surfing today, or you can sit home and read. This is what I do. But what I've come to learn through my exposure to Celtic spirituality is that it's not either or, but both and. It's the church reformed, always reforming. And one of the times before I even came to Westwood, when I was in seminary, I was a resident minister at, I was a token Protestant at the University of San Francisco. I cantored their student mass at 9 o'clock on Sunday night. And what I noticed is the Roman Catholic Church, in their hymnals, they have many more hymns about creation than you'll find in a Protestant hymnal. We have all creatures great and small, and you can, drop your voice pretty soon after that. And I really loved that. And I think that was an influence from this kind of spirituality. And what bothers me that we've been slow to embrace this in the mainstream Protestant church is that one of the cries of the Reformation was the church reformed, always reforming. So I am very, very open to this. In fact, I kind of side with Pelagius over Augustine, but don't tell the Board of Pensions. And it is very incarnational. Celtic spirituality celebrates the ordinary. The Celtic approach to God opens up a world in which nothing is, I love this quote, I'm going to start it again, I want to be sure you hear it. The Celtic approach to God opens up a world in which nothing is too common to be exalted, and nothing is so exalted that it cannot be made common. And that's current scholar Esther Duval, who will be in your bibliography. A holy worldliness, no false divide between the sacred and the secular. And that's a huge challenge. It's so easy for me to stand up here and say it. And then I don't get something I was supposed to get in the mail, and it ticks me off. So faith is a journey without maps. And that's Frederick Buechner, who you all know. And then I love, and the same, Living the Questions from Rilke. I saw one reference to the Celtic faith is like the 5-string harp. What we hear, what we see, what we smell, what we taste, all speak of God. There has been, I think, a problem in the Reformed tradition, a real resistance to creation theology because of the fear that we're going to end up worshiping rocks. And we're not. This kind of spirituality embraces the creation and worships the God who created it. When you look at that stone, when you look at those stones, you see God's work. And I love that. When I was in seminary, I had an ongoing debate with one of my systematic theology professors who was a beautiful young woman. She just had a baby, and she really was totally into TULIP, and TULIP is an acronym that starts with totally depraved. Totally depraved. And, you know, I never really bought that fully. I mean, I do look around today and say, yeah, maybe. There's some pretty good evidence that we are totally depraved, but I'm still hanging on. But I remember Leanne, one time she said, when I was arguing with her about this, she said, well, but her baby was a toddler. Should I look at my baby? And already she's selfish and she, blah, blah. I said, that's how babies survive. I don't know about you, but I had babies who didn't cry or get cranky when they needed something. I'd be in a book somewhere and too bad. You know, so I perceive that as the survival. Also, you've got the Lord of the Flies theory, which is very powerful. But a few years ago, I read that there was, did you read about the Lord of the Flies group? Kids who they had ditched school for a day. I think it was in New Zealand, somewhere around there. They ditched school for a day. They stole a boat from the harbor, and they ended up stranded on an island. And the kid who was most likely to be the leader broke his leg. Those kids all pulled together, and they didn't go the Lord of the Flies route. So anyway, that's just... And of course you hear reading, by the way, this book that was chosen, it's just... I've read everything. I think I've read almost everything John Philip Newell has written. And I think if you're just starting, I think it's really the best book. That it really, although he just published one that's really good too. But Newell talks all the time about liminal or thin places, the veil between earth and heaven, whatever heaven is. And this, I love this, the Lorca of Patrick. You all know this, but it does show Celtic bent. In preaching of apostles, in faiths of confessors, in innocence of holy virgins, in deeds of righteous men, I arise today through the strength of heaven, light of sun, brilliance of moon, splendor of fire, speed of lightning, swiftness of wind, depth of sea, stability of earth, and firmness of rock. You know, from the breastplate of. But you know, gotta give Calvin a little credit here. He says, all the blessings we enjoy are divine deposits, committed to our trust on this condition, that they should be dispensed for the benefit of our neighbors.
That's Christianity.
Yeah, who knew? And you know what that comes from, I think. This is my theory. I don't know what you think, Chris and Paula, but from a mistranslation in the King James Version of the creation, the second story where God says to Adam, you will have dominion over the animals and the creation. And that has been skewed to think of it as we do whatever we want. And now we're finding out that wasn't such a good idea. And so I think really that word in the original Hebrew was more stewardship. You were to take care of them, not destroy them for your own greed. And then here's another John Calvin quote. There is not one blade of grass, there is no color in this world that is not intended to make us rejoice. That's what I have to work on a lot. I'm a brooder, and you know, if you said something that hurt my feelings today, I can guarantee you next month I'm still thinking about it. That's a real challenge, And then this is Anselm of Canterbury. No created being has anything from itself, for how could a thing which does not exist from itself have anything from itself? Moreover, if there is not anything except the one who has created and things created by him, it is clear that nothing at all can exist. Flame and praises God. The wind blows the flame and praises God. In the voice we hear the word which praises God, and the word when heard praises God. So all of creation is a song of praise to God. And there's another one from her. Love abounds in all things, excels from the depths to beyond the stars, is lovingly disposed to all things. She has given the King on high the kiss of peace. And that is that. I have neglected all kinds of things. There's all kinds of names up there that I should have told you about that I didn't. And I asked my daughter, who took me to Scotland, Meghan, some of you may remember Meghan. She is now a pastor in Iowa, and she had a sabbatical, and she talked on the phone to me for months about going to Scotland, and then like about 5 months before she was going to do the Camino in Spain and then go to Iona. And I said, Meghan, do you think I'm going with you? And she said, yeah. Oh, wow, I better get on that. So at the time we went, it was a pretty challenging time as things were going on in my life. And I really kind of went reluctantly to the airport, and I'm so grateful I did. We spent a week on Iona, and that wasn't nearly enough time. And I asked her to send me some pictures, which she sent. She attached to an email and sent, and I had no idea how to put them in PowerPoint. So that's why you don't have them. But if you'd like to see some of them, I maybe could, if you put that on the bibliography, I maybe could send them.
Yes.
Just beautiful, but you can, there's so much information available because Celtic spirituality is in. In fact, several women from Westwood went to Ghost Ranch in New Mexico in 2000. Was it before I retired? It was right after I retired, wasn't it? I think the John Philip Newell retreat for a week. And he's quite interesting. He was educated at St. Andrews, and it's interesting. He's given up his ordination in the Church of Scotland. He probably got tired of being called a heretic. But you know what I really believe strongly is stay at the table. Stay at the table. When I was a resident minister, a USF, the campus minister, the person exec, was a former nun. And one time she and I were talking. She agreed with me on abortion. She agreed with me on every fire-breathing liberal idea I have. And I said, well, then Maureen, I don't understand. Why do you stay in the Catholic Church? And she said, people ask me that, and it always surprises me. She said, I'm Irish. I'm Catholic. She stayed at the table, and in her staying at the table, she has made the Catholic Church better. And so, anyway, that's all she wrote, I think. Oh, no, this was what I was going to end with. And when I saw your poem, I thought, oh, I love Mary Oliver. This is another poem by Mary Oliver. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean. The one who has flung herself out of the grass, the one who is eating sugar out of my hand, who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I have been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? And when I thought, because I almost put the poem you used, I thought, no, I'm going to change it. I'm going to put that poem there. So I'm glad I didn't.
Thank you, Peggy.
Okay, thank you, Peggy. So we've got a little time for question and answers if anybody has questions for Peggy. Oh, let's see, Ellen first.
Thank you for this. I just have a question about liminal spaces. So everyone that I've spoken to that's been to Iona talks about that it's a liminal space. But do you have to go to Iona to have a liminal space?
Oh, and the question is, do you have to go to Iona to have a liminal space?
How do you...
Yeah, I'm actually glad you asked that, because this is one thing I was going to include in my zipping through my faith journey. No matter how old we are, 80, no matter how old we are, there are things from our childhood that never disappear. And one of those things in my life, when I was a preschooler, my parents lived in a little acreage in Emmett, Idaho, southern Idaho, and it was just a beautiful little spot. And I have never forgotten a day. It was when, the blacklist and the McCarthy scare was on, and actually my parents thought McCarthy was okay. So I remember thinking I was doing something under this exquisite blue spruce tree, and I remember thinking, well, when I grow up, I am going, and the commie scare, of course, I'm going to be a missionary, and I'm going to go to the Soviet Union and teach all those people about Jesus. Well, that didn't happen. Unfortunately, because Putin could have used it. But I just remember, I would call that a liminal moment. Something. It wasn't about what I planned to do in my life. It was something about the light. And I had that same experience when my daughter Meghan and I went to Pompeii. One of the first things we did at Pompeii was we were at the Temple of Diana, and Vesuvius was right over there. And the Temple of Diana is right here. And that I had this intense affinity or feeling for those people who were at the Temple of Diana seeking God somehow, some way. And there was Vesuvius. So the challenge, of course, in Celtic spirituality is what's, it isn't all a Sunday school picnic. And what does that do to our view of God? I have one of my closest friends, and I wish I'd put this up there, is that one of the terms that's used in Celtic theology is Anam Cara. I should have written it up there. A-N-A-M, as in mother, C-A-R-A. It's a soul friend. And to be truthful, my spiritual soul friend, one of them, is my atheist friend in Taos, who does all kinds of reading. She was the head of the English department when I was there. And she does all kinds, she's gone off the rails about what's going on in the universe. She reads every science magazine. I don't even know how she does it. She told me, said, Peggy, if you read them enough, you start to understand. And thought, no, I've got Fitzgerald over here. So anyway, so I consider her, she's always there. We have 2-hour conversations at least once a week. And she is always there for me. I have other soul friends who are always there for me. That was what was important in the monastic community. So no, liminal space is in your backyard.
Steve, you had a question?
Before you went to Iona, what did you expect?
Oh, and the question is, before you went to Iona, what did you expect?
That's a good question, and I was familiar with Iona before, In fact, when I was here at Westwood, I was an associate member then, and then I had quit, and I wasn't, and so I think I was expecting to be lifted, and I was expecting my faith to be on a renewal for however long that would last, 2 weeks, 2 years, 2 decades. But I was really glad I'd gone. Seriously, I really did not. In fact, my Aunt Cara in Taos told me I shouldn't go, because given what was going on in my life, she said, you shouldn't do that. You can't do that right now. And I did it right then. And I'm most grateful that I did. It was the right thing to do. So I really, in the Reformed tradition, and I think rightly so, we don't say you have to go to the desert to, you don't have to be a recluse. But sometimes in our life, it's good to pull back and do some, I think, thinking on your own and going into a cocoon kind of, or cave, I guess in my case. Every great myth has the cave in it. Yeah. Every great myth. And so what I would go back. Actually, to be honest, if I were younger, if I were 20 years younger, I probably would go serve as a volunteer. But I told Meghan, I said I would love to do that, but I think they might expect me to work. So that's out.
All right, any other questions for Peggy? All right, great. Hey, well, thank you very much. Wait. Mark.
I don't know if it's going to turn into a question, but I have always taken exception until we have ventured into this earth care and John Philip Newell's treatment of our need as part of the rebirthing process to become more attuned, to reclaim our innate relationship with the earth, including rocks. Yeah. And I have heard people say derogatorily about others who they may not favor or may not like. She or he is dumb as a box of rocks. Rocks are not so dumb. Longevity, durability, use in structures. I mean, it is just, rocks serve in their, it's like Jesus writing in the sand. An innocuous action, but it prompts and invokes provocative thoughts.
Yes, yeah. And I would say that here's an experience I had years ago when I was still at Westwood. When some of you may remember when my kids took me for my 60th birthday to Europe, because I'd never been, and Holly and Randall and I went to Chartres. Meghan hadn't met us yet, and they have. How many of you have been to Chartres? They have a wonderful labyrinth. It's only uncovered on Friday, so we went on a Friday because I wanted to walk the labyrinth. And as I was walking, it's kind of there's a seating area, and then the labyrinth, and then more seating area up towards the front. And my goal in that walk, I had a purpose. I'm too judgmental. I'm way too judgmental. It's my greatest trial, really, seriously. I mean, I'm listening to a well-educated politician on TV, and I think, well, that's the wrong gender, or that's the wrong declension, or that's the wrong whatever. And so it's a constant task for me, and sometimes not nearly as cute as that. But so that was going to be my purpose in that walk, was when I went in, I was going to cast off all my judgmental stuff. Well, meanwhile, behind is a sound from his accent, a British tour guide who is talking at the top of his voice, to his people, not even trying to lower it, and he's right next to the labyrinth, and I'm not the only person on the labyrinth. There's 3 or 4 other people trying to walk it. And pretty soon he says, okay, let's go to the front, and they all just went right through the labyrinth. Really? I mean, my sister, who is a fundamentalist and thinks God finds her parking places, probably would say, God's telling you something, Peggy. And I'm not sure God wasn't. Because, so all of this is just, a lot of the movement, I think in Rebirthing of God, I don't remember, but I think, but there is a lot of writing going on about maybe we can save this planet yet, but we have to take it seriously. And there is, by the way, what is that, Chris, or Paula, the green faith? There's a green faith aspect of the Presbyterian Church. I get emails from them all the time. Pardon? Yes, Presbyterians for Earth Care. And so I think the church has come, in most cases, to understand that, it's time.
All right. Hey, well, thank you very much, Peggy.